Hi, I'm William Stewart, co-founder of Teleios. Welcome back to our verse-by-verse study on the book of Mark. We just covered the feeding of the 5,000. The story keeps zoomed in on another particular incident here, well known of Jesus walking on the water. Let's go to the text, verse 45, and straightaway he constrained his disciples to get in the ship, and they go to the other side before unto Bethsaida. This is the north part of the Sea of Galilee. And while he sent away the people, and there he sent them away, I think the disciples themselves, and departed unto a mountain to pray. So Christ often did this, probably about 9 times as recorded in the various Gospels. We think of Gethsemane. This instance, he prayed in the desert before being tempted, but oftentimes after the crowds, he would go and pray. And, he was one with the Father. He had this relationship with the Father. He's receiving power from the Father and the Spirit at some point. And it's particularly from his man side, he needed to be, I would think, in a little bit resuscitated or rested. And when he was come, the ship was in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. Evening. Verse 48. And he saw them, Christ seeing the disciples, toiling and rowing, for the wind was contrary to them. And about the fourth watch, this would be between 3 and 6 a.m. of the night, he came to them walking on the sea, and would have passed them, I guess, because the wind was against the disciples. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they supposed they had seen a spirit and cried out. So they seemed to be fearful. Verse 50, for they all saw him and were troubled, and immediately they talked with him, and he said, be of good cheer, it is I, don't be afraid. So I'm not a spirit, it's just Jesus. And when he went up to them into the ship, the wind ceased, and they were amazed in themselves beyond measure and wondered. So again, this is another great miracle of Christ over the elements, like we saw in the feeding of the 5,000. We'll see this in the feeding of the 4,000. A like miracle was the calming of the sea that is in Matthew 8. And also the turning of the water into the wine at Cana in John 2. For they considered not the miracle of the loaves, for their heart was hardened. And this is referring to the disciples in verse 52. So what are we seeing in this miracle? Again, a miracle over the nature. I think that Christ has given them a follow-up lesson to the calming of the sea and extended it by him walking on the water. In the book of Matthew, it talks about how Christ invites Peter to walk on the water. And Peter wanted to, and he went out and suddenly lost faith and sank into the water. Christ had to save him. So I think, again, we're at a time as Christ is coming to the end of his ministry. We're seeing here from chapter 6 up until he enters Jerusalem at chapter 11. And like in Matthew chapter 14, up until the time of chapter 21, he's focusing on his disciples more so, trying to prepare them for the time he goes away. So he extends the lesson from the calming of the sea, even to him walking on the water. And in Matthew, Peter walking on the water. They failed the test. Again, as it says in verse 52, their hearts were hardened. So what does this mean? Well, the prior lessons meant they weren't really thinking in a godly way as Christ would want them to, trusting him despite the great miracle of the loaves. We don't know why. Perhaps, obviously, they were fearful from the storm and they forgot all their lessons to trust Jesus. Maybe they were unhappy with Jesus because he left them in the boat alone to face the storm. So being aggravated, we're not sure. But I think the primary point is their faith left them. And even when Christ calmed the waters and Peter was there with Christ walking on the water in Matthew, the faith left him then as well. So again, we see Christ's patience, his compassion in trying to help them in their faith. We see also, again, a personal miracle to them, again showing his messiahship. They didn't land in the area of Gennesaret. This is the northwestern portion of the Sea of Galilee. If the Sea of Galilee is round, so if it's like a clock, probably about 11 o'clock. They drew in the shore. People knew him. And again, they brought their sick to them. And he healed and touched them and made them whole. So again, the story zooms out. Christ is resuming his healing ministry again, showing compassion and that he is Messiah and to believe in him. The main point here is that they believe, and generally they do not. So we see him teaching his disciples, ministering to the masses as Messiah. In this time, after Christ's rejection, he still faces the Pharisees. We see this particularly in Luke, and perhaps less so in Matthew, less so in Mark, as Mark is directed mostly to the Gentiles. All right. Thanks for joining me today. What we've looked at is Christ calming the storm and walking on the water, again, trying to teach his disciples, preparing them for when he goes away, and Christ's continued compassionate, patient, healing ministry, this time in Gennesaret. I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video.